And good afternoon. You're listening to Ken Hudnall. This is the Ken Hudnall Show. Coming to you from our studios right here in exciting El Paso, Texas, gateway to the Old West and the most haunted city in the country. Well, today's July the 30th, 211th day of this year. Just 154 days remain to the year's over with, and we'll start a new one. We have a number of interesting holidays. International Day of Friendship, number of historical events. 1619, the first representative assembly in colonial America, the House of Birch, convened in Jamestown. 1956, President Eisenhower signed the law making "In God We Trust" the official motto of this country. And in 1976, Bruce Jenner, before he became Caitlin, won a decathlon gold medal and set a world record at the Montreal Olympics. And as for birthdays, the one and only Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, was born on this date, 1947. He was not only an actor, but former governor of California. Before Gavin, look at my hair, Newsom became governor. Well, let's see what stories we have in the news on this date. Iran's failed attack on U.S. forces sparks a powerful response as President Trump's warning comes true. The U.S. forces retaliated after Iran attacked. As experts warn, the regime is growing more dangerous. We resumed airstrikes inside Iran last night, in retaliation for Tehran's attempted surprise ballistic missile attack on American forces. One Iranian expert warned that the regime has become increasingly willing to test Washington despite its weakened military capabilities. Those strikes are a powerful response to yesterday's attempted Iranian attack on U.S. forces based in the Middle East. And U.S. Central Command made that statement as a new operation began. That's according to the Associated Press. Maybe they'll learn, but then again, how many people have to die because the lunatics running that country don't understand the fact that they're outclassed militarily? Well, the Army has conducted the first overseas test of the Hammer of God weapons, which disrupts the system. U.S. Army on Sunday revealed it has tested a new warfare system overseas designed to covertly scramble the navigation signals used by enemy precision weapons, making it harder for adversaries to accurately strike targets from long distances while avoiding detection. This new electronic system, called the Hammer of Gods, was tested at sea off the U.S. West Coast for the first time in mid-July as part of the Project Convergence Capstone 6 experiment. While land-based versions have been demonstrated over the past 2 years, the exercise marked the first official debut of the maritime variant, according to the Army. Portable signal disruptor can reportedly blind enemy to several precision-guided missiles, such as long-range artillery, guided missiles, and cruise missiles. Radio signals, specifically jam positioning, navigation, and timing signals, including GPS data. Precision weapons rely on to navigate accurately. Without the reliable data, weapons accuracy drops sharply, increasing the likelihood of delayed missions and missed targets. Well, Ted Cruz demands Fauci face jail time. That was him, America's most damaging bureaucrat. He's calling for Fauci to be held in contempt of Congress, persecuted for perjury, and sent to jail after the former White House COVID-19 advisor pleaded his Fifth Amendment right more than 100 times during a Senate hearing on Wednesday. According to Cruz, years from now, they'll look back and say, what collective madness overtook this country? He said, I think Fusey has had contempt of Congress and contempt for the American people for decades, he said. His diary shows he deliberately lied to the American people over and over again about COVID-19, where it came from, and what needed to be done. Cruz made those comments after Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee Chairman Rand Paul announced he'll seek contempt charges against Fauci after Fauci dodged self-incrimination by refusing to answer any question throughout the entirety of the hearing. In fact, at one point, his attorney was actually thrown out of the hearing. We'll see what comes of it. Well, Clinton, Obama-era Democratic heavyweights, Penn and Emanuel ripped New York City's Mandami over taxes, Israel, and blast DSA. Two prominent Democratic figures with deep ties to the Clinton-Obama administration publicly criticized New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani this week, with former Clinton advisor Mark Penn attacking the mayor's proposed property tax plan, while former Obama White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel recounted what he described as a private conversation in which he called a challenge Mamdani's rhetoric on Israel. The criticism is notable because it comes from longtime Democrat insiders rather than Republican opponents, and focuses on two of the issues that have defined Mamdani's rise in the political spectrum: his far-left economic agenda and his position on Israel. The Fox News Digital reached out to Penn, Emanuel, and Mamdani's office for a comment. Well, it's, as they used to say when I was growing up, Mamdani's alligator mouse going to overload his hummingbird rear. Yeah. Megan Maroney cancels the show mid-performance, left the stage in tears. Country music star Megan Maroney and her cut her Denver concert short Tuesday night after becoming too sick to continue performing, later telling fans it was the hardest decision she has ever had to make. She took to the stage at the Ball Arena, but struggled through just 3 songs before stopping the show. She returned to address the audience herself, apologizing. She fought back tears. She said, I'm obviously extremely sick, and I thought I did everything to make myself better, and obviously 2 songs in, I just can't play the show tonight, told the crowd in a fan-recorded video. Despite ending the performance early, she assured concert goers she planned to make up for that disappointing night. I want to give you guys the show you deserve. I'm sorry, she said. Fans inside the arena responded with encouragement, one audience member shouting, "That's okay, Meg, we love you," as the visibly emotional singer exited the stage. Ball Arena later confirmed the concert had been canceled because Maroney was under the weather. Well, that's she's not the first singer who has stopped her show mid-performance but for illness, and I'm sure it won't be the last. Well, a Washington mother pulled children from school after pride lessons shown in music class without notice. One Washington mother says she's withdrawing her children from an elementary school after learning a pride-themed lesson had been presented during music class without advance notice to parents or an opportunity to opt out. Raises questions about district policies governing classroom instruction. She said, I assumed I'd probably missed an email asking for consent, but there was nothing. Maria Verchetto said in communications with school administrators. She shared those communications with the Fox News Digital on Monday. No advance notice, no opportunity to review the lesson, no information letting parents know the topic will be discussed, no option to request that our kids be allowed to opt out and participate in alternative activity. There was absolutely nothing. Verchetto alleged the lesson was presented to elementary school students, including her daughter, on June 15th at Arthur Lake Elementary School in Edmonds School District as part of a music class, and parents were not informed beforehand. Verchetto said that a video entitled Why is Pride in June from the YouTube account Oscar Queer Kid Stuff, which according to the account imagines a kinder, more equal future through highly accessible education and entertainment for kids ages 3+. That video was shown to her 4th grade daughter. The YouTube channel describes itself as an LGBTQ plus educational website for children ages 3 plus, hosted by the tie-wearing queer lady Lindsay and her non-binary best friend Teddy. Gender Studies 101 meets Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Roberto said the incident prompted her to remove her children from the school. And you're going to see more and more of that as the administrators have their own idea of how the world ought to be. Well, socialism's war on success has a new champion, and he's running for Senate in Michigan. The summer's collective uplift from our nation's 250th birthday and the United States' role in co-hosting the World Cup has collided with the ominous spread of socialism across the American left. The dangerous philosophy is no longer confined to Ivy League faculty lounges or deep blue enclaves in New York City either. The next month's primary in Michigan, a critical national battleground, Democrats could nominate Abdul El-Sayed for the U.S. Senate. And El-Sayed may try to distance himself from the socialist label and his long-standing ties to the Democratic Socialists of America, but his platform speaks for itself. For starters, he not only boasts the support of prominent socialist Bernie Sanders, independent of Vermont, and Representative AOC, Democrat of New York, but has also recently campaigned with him in Michigan. And furthermore, he's gone way out of his way to link himself to self-described Democratic Socialist New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani. Last summer, his campaign event even ran ads saying Zohran won and Abdul is next. That is not good for this country, but, the Democratic Party knows better than anybody else. Just ask them, they'll tell you. And the real estate vet comes at Mayor Bass with receipts over damning homelessness report. Said she doesn't get it. As new data shows homelessness rising in Los Angeles, local activist John Ali said Mayor Karen Bass has neglected responsibility to address the issue and witness firsthand the crime, the drug use, and deteriorating conditions in some of the city's hardest hit neighborhoods. Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority released its 2026 annual homeless count Friday, finding overall homelessness increased 3.4% in LA and 1.2% across the Los Angeles continuum of care after 2 consecutive years of declines. Though the Homeless Service Authority said neither change is considered statistically significant. The county estimated 45,194 people were experiencing homelessness in LA and 73,040 across the continuum of care, which excludes Long Beach, Pasadena, and Glendale. According to John Alley, a Santa Monica business owner and co-founder of Santa Monica Coalition, who owns property across Los Angeles, she doesn't get it. She just doesn't see it. We've invited her numerous times to ride along with us through Alvarado, 3rd Street, Parkview, MacArthur Park, and Westlake. We've said, come drive with us, have a police officer follow behind for security, and she has refused. The report also found street homelessness rose 7.9% in Los Angeles and 3.3% countywide, with an estimated 29,115 people living on the streets in the city. They said funding cuts affecting time-limited subsidies and other economic factors reduced the number of people permanently housed by about 5,100 from the record high of 28,625 people housed permanently in 2024. In a press release Thursday responding to the data, Bass argued funding cuts at the federal and state level contributed to the rise, adding the Trump administration had driven up the cost of gas and groceries and rent, pushing more families to the edge and slashed critical safety and funding. As is the default position of every Democrat out there, everything wrong with the world is Trump's fault. Just ask them, they'll tell you. Well, Senator Deb Fischer said the left's war on the Senate and the Supreme Court puts our republic at risk. Democratic Socialists of America recently rolled out a policy platform wrapped in delusional promises. Free government-run health care, the abolition of the police and prison systems, the defunding of the military. While those proposals sound crazy enough, something far more radical is buried underneath. A call to abolish the Senate and subordinate the presidency and the Supreme Court to a new unicameral body that would choose and control the executives and the judicial branches. The Democratic Socialists of America are living in a fantasy world where everything is the way they want it to be. Unfortunately, the real world doesn't agree. Now, that proposal is not just unserious, it's a direct assault on the Constitution. The attacks on the Supreme Court's legitimacy and the calls to abolish the Senate spring from the same impulse. Impatience with constitutional limits on political power. When institutions become obstacles to ideological goals, the answer should never be to just tear them down. But that's the socialist mindset. And that mindset has consequences beyond political rhetoric. Our Supreme Court justices and their families have been subject to escalating threats in recent years. During a recent Senate Appropriations Committee hearing, the Justice Amy Corey Barrett and Anna Kagan were vocal, describing a security posture has not kept pace with the threats they now face. After the leak of the court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, Justice Barrett came home from work wearing a bulletproof vest given to her by her security detail. She recounted placing that vest on the table and having to explain to her 12-year-old son what it was and why she had to wear it. Well, if doing your job puts you in the line to be shot, there's something wrong with the system. Well, former Democratic staffers and DEI leaders shaped the Smithsonian leadership amid a political firestorm. As Republicans intensify scrutiny of the Smithsonian Institution, numerous former Democratic staffers and employees of progressive nonprofits are holding senior positions throughout the nonprofit, while officials responsible for hiring emphasize diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. The bottom line to DEI hiring is white males need not apply. And Fox News review of public biographies and social media profiles identified roughly 24 individuals employed by the Smithsonian in leadership positions or as curators who work for Democratic offices or progressive nonprofits before being hired. Leadership biographies and political donation records indicate the pattern extends beyond a handful of senior employees. That former Democratic staffers and residuals previously employed by liberal nonprofits now hold leadership positions at Smithsonian is likely to further fuel conservative criticism that the sprawling museum and research organization developed a left-of-center bias. And unfortunately, we're seeing more and more of that. One Ohio man found shot dead in an execution-style killing while camping on Puerto Rico beach. His camping excursion ended in murder in Puerto Rico after reporters say he was shot and killed execution-style. Tyler Wilkin, 35, was living in Puerto Rico after moving from Ohio in 2024, was found dead with a single gunshot wound to the back of his head earlier this month. Family and friends say he was camping at the Playa La Selva remote beach near Uquillo before he was killed. Local Puerto Rican media outlet Tell Them Once reported a body was found in a mangrove on the beach July 10th. Woman who says she is Wilkins' girlfriend, Eva Moe, told Fox 19 Cincinnati that Wilkins had been texting friends from the campsite about hearing eerie howling outside his tent on what sounded like fireworks. Well, the following night he texted another unsettling message saying that the howler's back. About 2 hours after that, he texted that the person was getting rowdy. Wilkins' loved ones have organized a fundraiser to help pay for the hire of a private investigator in that case. Fundraiser page said in a recent post, "We're determined to leave no stone unturned in the pursuit of the truth. And those additional funds will help us cover any and all expenses that may arise during the private investigation. He deserved a full life, and he deserves for every possible avenue to be explored." Well, there's unfortunately a lot of unsolved murders these days. Well, a teen found in the Charlotte, California vineyard grave identified after 50 years as the family warns the killer. The body is found buried in a shallow grave beneath a California vineyard about 50 years ago. She's finally been identified, reopening a murder mystery that's gone cold for 48 years. Michelle Louise Collier was just 15 years old when she vanished from Fresno in February 1978. 4 months later, a tractor operator cultivating a grape vineyard near Arvin uncovered her skeletal remains buried in a shallow grave. But investigators couldn't identify the teen, leaving her known only as Arvin Jane Doe for nearly 50 years. Her older sister, Cynthia Dunbar, said the family spent almost 50 years wondering what happened before finally learning she'd been the identified homicide victim all along. Disappeared 48 years ago, and it's only recently we knew where she was, Dunbar said in a news conference on Wednesday. At least with this information, my family has some closure. But she also sent a message to the person responsible for her sister's death. The shock of finding out we lost our sister to a homicide is overwhelming to our entire family, especially our 85-year-old mother, Maria. And to the person that killed our sister, your cowardice act affected our entire family, she said. Make no mistake, law enforcement will find you and hold you accountable. Whether you're already incarcerated or dead, you'll be found. May God bless your soul, because you're going to feel hell if you're not already there. Authorities said Collier's remains were discovered June 21st, 1978, near South Wheeler Ridge Road after the tractor operator unearthed a shallow grave. And we've had more than one long-term murder being found by workers and hikers and what have you. School employees accused of secretly filming 12 girls in changing rooms. He's now facing new charges. Maryland high school employee accused of secretly recording female students in a school changing room is facing additional criminal charges after investigators identified 8 more alleged victims during an expanded investigation. James Mulhern III, an employee at Walter Johnson High School in Montgomery County, now faces 12 counts of abuse of a minor after investigators said newly discovered videos showed a total of 12 female students in various stages of undress. For the Montgomery County Police, the investigation began after 2 students discovered a video camera in the control booth of Walter Johnson High School's theater April 7th. One of the students reviewed the memory card and found videos recorded inside the girls' changing room before alerting school administrators. Police said the footage showed an adult male putting the camera inside the room before leaving. School's principal identified that man as Mulhern, a media services technician at the school. Detectives executed search warrants at the high school and Mulhern's Clarksburg home. They discovered items of evidentiary value and seized several electronic devices, according to police. Authorities said evidence recovered during the investigation led detectives to identify 8 additional alleged victims and videos going back to 2015, expanding the case from the 4 victims identified when Mulhern was first charged in April. Well, there's been a number of stories I've heard about that type of abuse. It's never good. Well, just for those that keep track of such things, Fosse invoked the Fifth Amendment during his congressional hearing 111 times. Now, 1 or 2 or maybe 5 or 10 I can understand, but 111? Well, Caitlin Clark sends WNBA All-Star ratings soaring as three-point contest audience falls without her. Now, ESPN's plenty to celebrate after the WNBA All-Star weekend. Saturday night's WNBA All-Star game averaged 3.2 million viewers on ABC. Peaked at 3.3 and became the second most watched edition of the event in league history. The audience increased 44% from last year when Caitlin Clark attended the game but didn't play because of an injury. And this year she was on the court. One night earlier, she wasn't part of the WNBA three-point contest after declining an invitation, and she wasn't among the participants in the WNBA's new Shooting Stars event. That audience predictably went in the opposite direction. After Outkick and Fox News Digital asked ESPN for figures, a network spokesperson said Friday's telecast averaged 1.17 million viewers on ESPN and peaked at 1.35. The average declined about 11% from the 1.313 million viewers who watched last year's competition. Well, Clark didn't compete last year either, but she was expected to make her three-point contest debut before withdrawing because of an injury just one day before the broadcast. And ESPN publicly celebrated a Saturday strong audience and also promoted the 1.8 million viewers who watched WNBA Countdown, which featured a sit-down interview with Clark before the game. But its ratings graphic didn't include Friday's average or peak audience. They didn't explain why. They're trying to cover up the fact, I suspect, that she is a major draw. Well, Sophie Cunningham fans allege Storm players and executive heckled girls during the game over support of women's sports. Night of celebration devolved into a storm of chaos in Seattle. Women who were at the Indiana Fever game against the Seattle Storm on Tuesday night told Fox News that the Storm players and even co-owner Celeste Keaton made mocking gestures and insults to girls who were there to celebrate Sophie Cunningham. The Storm provided a statement for Fox News apologizing for the conduct of the co-owner. According to that statement, we're aware one of our co-owners made comments to two fans in the attendance at last night's game. We apologize that this happened. Everybody who attends a Storm game deserves to feel welcome, and we remain committed to creating an inclusive environment where every fan's treated with respect. The game became a flashpoint in a national debate over trans athletes when Cunningham supporters showed up to hold a rally outside Climate Pledge Arena in support of her recent statements on protecting women's sports. Well, but then when her supporters went back inside the arena, they allegedly faced shocking hostility, while fans in attendance relentlessly booed Cunningham from the moment she touched the ball. Well, when politics get involved in our sports, it's a bad situation. Well, Malik Neighbors looked good in a surprising full practice as Giants kicked off training camp in West Virginia. New York Giants fans were enthralled to see one player in particular participating in practice on Wednesday. Malik Neighbors, who suffered a serious knee injury in Week 4 of last season, looked good, according to his new head coach, John Harbaugh, as he went through a full practice, much to the delight of everybody involved with the organization. Well, there was no comment on a timeline for the 2024 first responder. Seeing Neighbors out on the field was quite the surprise for many. His injury wasn't a simple knee tear. He had to wait for the swelling to go down before undergoing surgery. Then in the spring, he had to get a scar tissue removed from the same knee while eliminating stiffness that he felt. After undergoing 2 surgeries, remaining sidelines, his status for Week 1 of the first few weeks of the season was up in the air. The general manager, Joe Schoen, has also enjoyed seeing him running around at the Greenbrier in West Virginia to start off camp. So he may well be playing this season. Well, let's talk about our topic for today. It's we've been talking about in the past. We've talked about hoaxes and we've talked about secret programs. Today we're talking about cover-ups. Going to start out talking about a name that's probably very familiar to most people, Martin Bormann. You know, it's been said by a lot of commentators, oh, Nazis never died. They go to Antarctica, or in the case of Adolf Hitler, to what's said to be the Nazi moon base. More plausibly, in the case of Martin Bormann, they have gone to the Soviet Union. In May of 1941, Bormann was made Nazi Party Chancellor, a position he used to become the Third Reich's main bureaucrat, and he was Hitler's right-hand man, his personal secretary and his sounding board, and he held that position with the Fuhrer until the end. The last incontestable sighting of Bormann was in the early hours of May 2nd, 1945, in the Laden Bridge in Berlin, as he sought to escape from encircling Russian troops. Post-war investigation by the Allies surmised Bormann had committed suicide or been killed near the bridge. But in the absence of a body, there couldn't be a confirmation. And for 20 years, rumors flew that Bormann was alive and well and living in either Germany or South America or even Spain. And then in 1971, Reinhard Galen published his memoirs called The Service. It stated as a fact that Bormann had survived the war and hidden from view in the unlikeliest place of all. He was said to be in the USSR, where he had recently died. Reinhard Galen was a Nazi very much involved in the intelligence world. Unlike other Bormann spotters, Galen had a pedigree, former head of the Nazi intelligence on the Eastern Front, and with the help of the CIA and the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, had taken on the job of spy chief in the new Federal Republic of Germany. And Galen asserted that there existed a film of Bormann watching sports with Soviet bigwigs. Made another sensational claim. Bormann was the only Russian spy, codenamed Werther, infiltrated Hitler's military planning sessions, passed on top-secret knowledge to Moscow that Russia needed to win Stalingrad, Kursk, and other battles on the Eastern Front. Well, Galen's identification of Bormann as Werther received a boost in 2000 with the publication of Hitler's Traitor, Martin Bormann and the Defeat of the Reich by Louis Kilzer. So fast was intelligence passed from Hitler's operations room to Stalin's that Kilzer believed that it must have come from somebody right at Hitler's side, and that had to be Bormann. If Bormann was Werther, it makes it natural that Stalin would have given him sanctuary after the war. That's why there were sightings of him in Russia. Well, there is, though, strong forensic evidence. Bormann died during the Battle of Berlin in 1945. In 1972, construction workers at Werther Bahnhof dug up two bodies, one of which was identified as Bormann's by his wartime dentist, Dr. Hugo Blask. The other body belonged to SS Dr. Ludwig Stumpfeger. Bodies were found just 40 feet from where Albert Krumnow, postal worker, had previously claimed to have buried Bormann in Stumpfeger. 1998 DNA test on the skull of one of the corpses confirmed it was Martin Bormann's. Traces of glass in the jaw suggested the two men had committed suicide by biting on cyanide capsules. Well, the positive identification of the Werther corpse as Bormann's holds the Bormann was Werther theory, because if Bormann had been a Soviet spy, presumably events would have indeed followed the scenario Galen proposed. Sue Werther. Vern Rulin, teleprinter supervisor at Hitler's wartime radio center at Zossen, suggested in a 1973 book that Werther was not just one, but two people. two female teleprinters at Zossen. Most inevitably, the forensic identification of Bormann's corpse hadn't killed off the conspiracy theories. In doppelgangers, Hugh Thomas suggested there was forensic indicators that Bormann died later than 1945. Notably, that the condition of the teeth were those of a man older than 45, and that was Bormann's age in 1945. And there appeared to be dental work in excess of the 1945 record. And the skull contained traces of volcanic red clay not found in Berlin, but commonly found in Paraguay. But there had been several Bormann sightings. And since DNA tests proved the skull had to be Bormann's, the necessary inference was that Bormann did survive the war and was reburied in Berlin by accomplices to give credence to the story he died in 1945. Well, apparently, in spite of rumors to the contrary, old Nazis do eventually die, but the conspiracy theories about them go on forever. I recommend that you read, if you're interested, Reinhard Galen's book, The Service, came out in 1971. Hugh Thomas's Doppelganger came out in 1995. Well, let's talk about some cover-ups involving the British royal family. The, vulgar reign over us, which was one of the lines from the British national anthem. That's not a popular sentiment with followers of conspiracy theories than the LaRouche, who has the 80-something Queen of Great Britain fingered as a drug runner and her husband Philip as the instigator of the Rwanda genocide, thanks to his private army, the World Wildlife Fund. Most folks thought it was about saving pandas, but according to LaRouche, it was involved in a number of underhanded things, such as the elimination of Princess Diana. Now, of course, the information I'm going to be talking about is not from today. We're talking about activities that were undertaken by the British royal family some time back. According to some Marxists and perennial U.S. presidential candidate LaRouche, British royal family heads a cabal of about 500. Operates through two agencies. One is the government department, the Overseas Development Office, and the other is a highly secret society called the Club of the Isles. Although the latter is not British only, having Dutch and Swiss aristocrats and magnates involved, its aim is a one world empire, a British global empire, that is. I've heard stories about that going back decades. Since the royal family and their lickspittles are few in number, for them to rule the world in the feudal manner in which they wish to become reaccustomed, the globe's population has to be reduced by about 80%. That's where Prince Philip and the World Wildlife Fund comes in. According to a 1994 report in LaRouche's Executive Intelligence Review, the 1994 Rwanda genocide is but the latest instance of the WWF in action. So how did it work? Well, since 1990, the WWF has been managing a guerrilla protection program, a guerrilla park in Uganda, right on the Rwanda-Zaire border, adjacent to Vulcan's Park on the Rwanda side of the border, and then Zaire's Virunga Park, along with the Algeria Park in Rwanda, along the Kenya and Uganda border. All these parks serving as training bases, staging areas, and arms depots for the invading rebels, who in reality all soldiers and officials in the Ugandan army of British puppet Museveni. And Museveni's run by British Overseas Development Minister, Lady Linda Chalker. So the entire Rwandan genocide had nothing to do with tribal or civil warfare. It was a British orchestrated assassination invasion program. And I've heard stories like that for years and years. Rwandan is apparently far from the only recent population-reducing atrocity to have been stirred up by the WWF and its military arm, the SAS. There are also disasters in the Sudan, Kenya, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, and South Africa. In fact, through its Afghanisi terrorist puppets, also known as Islamic extremists, the SAS is wreaking havoc just about everywhere on the earth. Comprising nearly 5,000 well-trained soldiers, the three SAS regiments are directly beholden to the sovereign that's completely outside the control of the British government. The perfidious British Crown has a set of weapons at its disposal, in addition to 5,000 SS commandos. In the new Dark Age conspiracy about LaRouche, follower Carol Schweitzer White, the plot by British writer H.G. Wells to keep the world in ignorance, so easy to manipulate by restricting scientific knowledge to an elite priesthood, was uncovered. And to keep the masses really ignorant, the British also promoted the morality-sapping counterculture that led to the liberal society of the 1960s. And in this scenario, the Grateful Dead were a British intelligence operation, a weapon of mass destruction. Meanwhile, the British domination of the narcotics trade since the Opium Wars has allowed the British to gather super profits from money laundering and offshore banking colonies and stupefy the poor masses even more by chemically addling their brains. LaRouche once said of the Queen in an interview, she's pushing drugs. She's the head of a gang pushing drugs. And you got David Icke saying she's a shape-shifting alien. Well, now that she's dead, we'll never know the truth or know how absolute loony Icke and LaRouche might be. You may wonder who, if Britain is the bad guy of the world, is the good guy. A 1977 Executive Intelligence Review study entitled Britain's Invisible Empire Unleashes the Dogs of War provides even more documentation of the ongoing war which the British Empire is waging to seize the mineral wealth of the planet and to destroy that nation-state uniquely capable of stopping the empire's designs, none other than the United States. According to LaRouche, the U.S. can save the world from the Satan that lives in London. The U.S. has survived the biggest threat to its existence, the Civil War, orchestrated by the British in an attempt to turn the North into an unthreatening agrarian economy. And if only the American electorate would vote in Lyndon LaRouche to the White House, all's going to be well, according to LaRouche. Trouble is, according to LaRouche's own Executive Intelligence Review, the House of Windsor and its agents and MI6 are trying to assassinate him. Deborah Hania Freeman, national spokesperson for the Roos, reported that the assassination order appeared covertly in a British women's magazine called Take a Break. It's not only Yankee uber patriots like the Roos who have the British royal family fingered for fascist hegemony. So does the New Age conspiracy guru David Icke, as I mentioned earlier. He identifies the Windsors as senior members of the SS. And more than this, in Icke's Illuminati DVD ties the British royal family into an Illuminati Babylonian Brotherhood conspiracy, which includes black magic and Zionistic Kabbalism and Satanism. Not bad going for 12-foot shape-shifting lizards. Yeah, according to Icke, the Windsors are alien lizards with a penchant for ritual sacrifice. Just one human to be slaughtered on the altar of their cold-blooded inhumanity was Princess Diana, and to be killed after she discovered her in-laws' extraterrestrial nature. According to Icke's researches, the reptilian bloodlines of the British royal family has a sub-branch that runs through the U.S., where the president's always the candidate with the greatest number of royal genes. Consequently, U.S. presidents are not chosen by ballot, they're chosen by blood. That means the Brits already have their hands in the U.S. Apparently, LaRouche had no idea. If you want to read more about it, David Goldman in 1978 came out with a book called Dope Incorporated. And then David Icke came out with a book in 1999 called The Biggest Secret. And Lyndon LaRouche in 1994 wrote it in the Executive Intelligence Review, October 28, 1994, The Coming Fall of the House of Windsor. And Carol Schweitzer-White wrote The New Dark Ages Conspiracy, Britain's Plot to Destroy Civilization. It came out in 1980. Any of those will give you a good overview of what these people believe is the truth. Well, everybody knows the Bush family, in this country at least. And everybody's heard about the bin Laden family. You know, there's said to be a connection between the two families. One family is a straight-arrow American political dynasty. The other is the Saudi construction industry clan, whose scion is the most wanted terrorist on earth, head honcho of Al-Qaeda. And you might think never the twain shall meet. On the very morning of the 9/11 attacks, former President of the U.S. George H.W. Bush was in a meeting at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel with Shafiq bin Laden, Osama's brother. The incumbent U.S. President's father was meeting with the 9/11 mastermind's brother. And this is something else to wonder about. In the days immediately after 9/11, commercial flights from the U.S. were locked down, with one exception. A 747 departed to Saudi Arabia with members of the bin Laden family on board. And the FBI is adamant they were allowed out without being questioned. Well, the relationship between the Bushes and the bin Ladens go way back. First became connected in Houston, Texas in the 1970s when George H.W. Bush's Arbusto 78 Oil Company got $1 million investment from Salim bin Laden, Osama's older brother. Investment came courtesy of the office of Jim Bath, a Bush family friend who also happened to be the U.S. representative of Salim bin Laden, head of the vast bin Laden building, arms, and car dealing enterprise. And the bin Ladens due to a cozy deal with the House of Saud, with the official builders in Saudi Arabia. So extensive was their wealth, they once loaned money to the Saudi treasury. Well, despite the bin Laden investment, Arbusto 78 was a failure. By 1987, the company and Bush's other oil ventures had been taken over by Harken Energy. That same year, Harken had $25 million underwritten by the Union de Banque Suisse and the BCCI. Shortly after that, BCCI would be investigated for money laundering for the CIA and for funding terrorism. Jim Bath also found himself under official scrutiny. The FBI believed he was directing Saudi funds into Texas companies, hoping to influence American foreign policy. And once he became president, George W. Bush initially claimed not to know Bath, despite evidence they had been friends since serving in the Texas National Guard together. In fact, Bath has also bankrolled Bush Jr.'s Texas gubernatorial campaign. Well, while the BCCI scandal rumbled on, Bush Sr. was out of the business loop, being first VP and then President of the U.S. Some more paranoid or maybe more clear-minded conspiracy researchers consider that Bush Sr. was every inch a tycoon while in the White House, being CEO of America, Inc., and fighting the Gulf War to ensure that Iraq didn't get a stranglehold on Kuwaiti oil supplies. Leaving the White House, he resumed his financial wheeling and dealing. One company he welcomed with open arms was the Carlyle Group, a private equity firm based in Washington, D.C. Founded in 1987, the Carlyle Group handled an arms, technology, and security portfolio estimated at $25 million. And on that group's behalf, George Bush Sr. went at least twice to Saudi Arabia to meet, guess who? Bin Laden family. And guess who invested heavily in the Carlyle Group? Bush's old friends, the Bin Laden family. There's a meeting of the Carlyle Group that Bush Sr. and Shafiq bin Laden were attending on the fateful morning of 9/11. By some accounts, Bush, bin Laden, and former U.S. Defense Secretary James Baker watched TV coverage of the attacks together. Well, what about Bush Jr.? Well, President George W. Bush was given a briefing by the CIA in August of 2001, outlining al-Qaeda's intention to attack the U.S. The name Osama bin Laden reportedly has haven't been explicitly mentioned. The Bush White House consistently refused to release a copy of that briefing, even to the congressional inquiry in 9/11. So did Bush Jr. turn a blind eye to the activities of Osama bin Laden because he was the son of the Bush family friends, the bin Laden? Did Bush make an error of judgment because the Bushes and bin Ladens had a 3-decade-long tie? Well, if he did, a lot of Americans paid the highest price. George W. Bush appointed Thomas Keane to chair the 9/11 investigation. Thomas Keane has had business dealings with Khalid bin Mahfouz, Osama bin Laden's brother-in-law. So it's a very incestuous organization. If you want to read more about it, Craig Unger wrote something called The House of Bush, The House of Saud. Secret relationship between the world's two most powerful dynasties. Came out in 2004. Well, from talking about the Bushes and the bin Ladens, let's talk about Roberto Calvi. June 18th, 1982, the body of Roberto Calvi was found swinging on a length of orange nylon rope underneath the Blackfriars Bridge in London. Had 10,000 pounds worth of sterling, Italian lira, and Swiss francs in his wallet, and his trousers were stuffed with bricks and stones from a nearby building site. The British coroner, of course, immediately called it suicide. Roberto Calvi certainly had reasons to kill himself. 62-year-old Italian had chaired Banco Ambrosiano, Italy's second largest private bank, and seen it collapse with debts of over 800 million pounds. The day before his death, his former secretary had jumped out of a Milan fourth-floor window in despair at the bank's crash. And Calvi had other woes as well. His link to the alleged murder of John Paul I. He'd be found guilty of the illegal export of billions of lira. Was free only pending an imminent appeal. During his sojourn in prison, he had tried to take his own life twice. 20 years later, in September 2003, the initial British coroner's verdict would be overturned by an Italian court, which heard evidence that Calvi was murdered by strangulation and that his hands had never touched the bricks in his pockets. Going to a mafia supergrass, Francesco Manolia. Calvi had been killed on the orders of mafia boss Giuseppe, the cashier Calvo, because Calvi had embezzled mafia money. Now, that's a very strange thing to undertake. The mafia also allegedly wanted to ensure that Calvi didn't reveal the Vatican's money laundering activities on their behalf. October 5th, 2005, Calvo, along with 4 other defendants, Flavio Carboni, Manuela Kleinzig, and Ernesto Diottelevi, and Calvi's former chauffeur bodyguard, Silvano Vittor, went on trial for the banker's murder. Calvi's son Carlo is adamant that his father was murdered to protect the money laundering folks at the Vatican Bank and their allies in the Masonic Lodge P2. His members sometimes refer to themselves as Frati Neri or Black Friars. Calvi himself had been a member of P2, led to the suggestion his body was hung symbolically on the Blackfriars Bridge as a Masonic warning to others. With the City of London Police, forensic experts in Rome, Kroll Associates, a private detective agency hired by Calvi, and forensic scientist Professor Bernd Brinkmann of Minster University all concur that Calvi was murdered. But on June 6, 2007, the Italian court threw out the charges against the five. There's a new investigation that went underway almost immediately, and it's still going on. If you want to read more, get the Observer. Had a story called Who Killed Calvi? It came out December 7, 2003. And then Robert Cornwell wrote a book called God's Banker, The Life and Death of Roberto Calvi. It came out in 1984. Well, almost anything can be the basis of a story about a cover-up. Let's talk about the deadly disease of cancer. There's a medical mafia, with the help of the elite who supposedly rule the world from the background, has suppressed all non-pharma cancer knowledge, as well as the causes and prevention of main suspect being death towers, chemtrails, junk food, chemicals, and drugs such as pesticides and vaccines, along with sugar, root canals, and miasms, while they've actively promoted a widespread use of cancer agents such as fluoridation, aspartame, and MSG. And the deaths resulting from this enforced, mostly deadly cancer medicine can be added to the 783,936 year of the USA allopathic deaths. There's a lot of non-pharma treatment for cancer. That's known as allopathic. In 1932, the U.S. Public Health Service experimented on black syphilitic farmers in Tuskegee, Alabama, and later withheld the penicillin that could have cured them. That gave rise to the story about the Tuskegee Airmen. Bill Clinton apologized personally on behalf of the U.S. government to the Tuskegee farmers in 1997. 2004, the New York Attorney General began a lawsuit against GlaxoSmithKline, asserting the pharmaceutical giant deliberately buried information proving that some users of fluoxetine hydrochloride, one of the brand names of which is Prozac, developed suicide tendencies. The company settled out of court for $2.5 million. Medical and more specifically pharmaceutical conspiracies do in fact exist. And there's been stories, there's one centered on cancer. According to that story, the pharmaceutical industry and the medical profession have colluded to obscure the availability of a cure. Full 27% of Americans think so, according to the Cancer Journal. And when President Nixon declared his war on cancer in 1971, $20 billion had been spent on cancer research in the U.S. alone, to little apparent avail. 1 in 4 people in the Western world will currently die from cancer, and this rate of incidence will increase according to the WHO, World Health Organization. It's going to increase to 50% by 2020. Hadn't quite done it, but that was the projections. And what reason could there be for such an abject and expensive failure other than the cover-up by vested interest? One of the first to condemn the cancer conspiracy was Dr. Raymond Rife, an optics engineer in San Diego. In the 1930s, he claimed to have discovered the bacteria that caused cancer, and he invented what was known as the Rife ray tube, a machine that cured cancerous growths by bombarding them with oscillating electromagnetic waves. And proof that the Rife ray tube worked actually came from the University of California. According to Rife supporters, cured 16 terminally ill patients with his device. Well, before the tube could go into mass production, the American Medical Association ordered an outright ban on its use. All his papers were destroyed by arson. Rife was alleged to have been murdered in 1971. According to a number of internet sites, violence against critics of the cancer conspiracy is on the increase. According to one of the sites, one wintry night, our house was burned to the ground, according to one critic, Dr. William Kelly. These lawless medical establishment devils went to work and poisoned him 3 times, he said. Tried to shoot him once during this time frame. Rice's proposition that cancer has a bacterial cause subsequently found favor with, among others, Dr. William Reich in the Cancer Biopathy. That book came out in 1948. Dr. Virginia Livingston Wheeler in The Conquest of Cancer in 1984, and Dr. Ellen Cantwell in The Cancer Microbe in 1990. And the cancer cure that worked in 1987, and healing of cancer, the cures, the cover-ups, and the solution now in 1990. Barry Lynn's proselytized on behalf of Rife's cure, and reconstructions of Rife Ray tube are currently on sale on the internet. Of course, there is no independent evidence that they work. According to Cantwell, is also a polemicist against the AIDS conspiracy. Recognition of microscopic cancer bacteria would be a massive embarrassment to the medical profession, require the dumping not only of existing research programs, but also the entire expensive array of radiation and chemotherapy equipment that fills oncology units. It is certainly the case that the medical establishment keeps its bifocals firmly fixed on chemotherapy, and radiation is the only worthwhile treatments for cancer. As many believe is shown by the story of Harry Hoxsey's tonic. For 3 decades, the American Medical Association, headed by Morris Fishbein, hounded the alternative practitioner Harry Hoxsey for selling Hoxsey's tonic as a cure for cancer. 1956, 46,000 public warning against Hoxsey cancer treatment posters were put up in U.S. post offices. In one 16-month period, Hoxsey was arrested over 100 times for practicing medicine without a license. And he certainly did not have medical training. He was a coal miner. Well, generations of apologists have claimed that his tonic, which you might have expected it to be snake oil, in fact wasn't. Indeed, the AMA belatedly admitted the stuff worked on skin cancer, at the very least. Tonic supposedly been invented by Hoxsey's great-grandfather, or maybe it was his father. Hoxsey told several versions of the story. He noticed that one of his horses cured itself of cancer by eating selected herbs. And indeed, subsequent research by The Lancet say the apologist confirmed that the herbal ingredients contained in Hoxsey's tonic, such as barberry and buckthorn, were effective agents against tumors. In fact, what the AMA discovered was that a primary constituent of Hoxsey's tonic was arsenic. And arsenic has the property that it burns away cells, and of course, it isn't choosy about whether those cells are cancerous or healthy. So if you smeared Hoxsey's tonic on the skin cancer, you get rid of the cancerous cells along with the other cells that which the stuff came in contact. You'd have no guarantee the cancer wouldn't return, of course, and more particularly, you'd have done nothing by needing metastasis that might already have taken place. In a sense, Hoxsey's tonic was found to have some effect on skin cancer. Same effect you could get through cauterization or amputation. Surely doctors, those most trusted of people, wouldn't be participants in a mass conspiracy to deny cancer sufferers life-saving treatments. But as the late cancer victim Michael Higgins wrote on my Cancer Facts website, I've been living with cancer for 3 years, and during that time been treated by about half a dozen medical professionals. And they're the people I'm being asked to believe are conspiring to keep the truth hidden from me in order to keep their jobs. Well, the jury's still out on Hoxsey's tonic, and there's a lot of other questions the medical profession will not answer. And on that note, we've come to the end of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow and talk more about some of the strangest cover-ups in the world. Until then, this is Ken Hudnall for the Ken Hudnall Show, saying have a truly great evening.